America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker.
And I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
And we're excited today to have Guy Berkebile with us. He's a small business owner in Somerset, Pennsylvania. Full disclosure, though, he is a board member of the Job Creators Network. He's the founder of Guy Chemical. But I want to spend a couple minutes, Alfredo, talking about an article that the Daily Mail ran this weekend, a story on the Biden administration's student loan workaround. And I know you talked to the reporter about that story because, as everybody knows, Job Creators Network is the organization that blocked the student loan bailout, and we're waiting basically any day for the Supreme Court to make a decision in that case. But I was wondering if you could just spend some time explaining that whole income-driven repayment scheme that they're working on.
Yeah, absolutely, Elaine. And, we're excited because not only did Daily Mail carry that, but this morning I was on Fox and Friends talking about that. And, I started, first of all, by saying that Biden knew all too well, I think, even from the beginning of this process, that this was complete administrative overreach and that it was illegal. He started actually after we filed our Supreme Court filing, he started this plan in January working on that. And it's basically a repayment scheme that halves the repayment amount from 10% down to 5% per month of discretionary income for borrowers. And after 10 years, it's basically forgiven. But again, the estimates from Wharton, for example, say it could be as high as $450 billion, which is almost worse than the original program itself. And so, again, here goes Joe Biden and his administration with his unelected bureaucrats trying to do a run around Congress. Because remember that just, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, both the Senate and the House on a bipartisan basis rejected his proposal, sent a bill to his desk, basically rejecting that, which he just vetoed. And so the American public has spoken, and clearly they've said now, we don't want this. It's not fair. And it really doesn't address the root cause of the problem, which is really, Elaine, what you and I have been saying all along, is why are we holding these American colleges more accountable? Why aren't we bringing in these presidents of these colleges into Congress and asking them, why are these tuition increases increasing for the past 12 or 15 years at double digits? I gave a shout out to Purdue University this morning on Fox because they actually just yesterday announced that for the 12th consecutive year, they are freezing their tuition increases. So for the past 12 years, they will not be increasing their tuition. So it can be done. And these other colleges and universities that are sitting on $700 billion of endowments should be asked, why aren't you guys doing that?
Yeah, with $700 billion in endowments, I mean, they could take care of this whole crisis. All the colleges could take care of this whole crisis themselves and pay off all the loans. It's amazing to me. I mean, if you sort of take a step back and look at the history of this and where this kind of started with the loans, it's back in 2008 when President Obama took the banks out of the whole process and brought it up to the federal level. And it became not free money, obviously, because, these people were taking loans, but easy money. The spigot just turned on and it didn't matter. And then colleges basically had a blank check just to move forward with higher tuition that's been outpacing the rate of inflation. But worse, they've been creating these degree programs that don't give kids the competitive skills to get jobs in the marketplace that actually pay back these loans, and they make that have jobs available to even pay back the loans. And that's part of the big problem is there's really no checks and balances on what's happening, and the colleges don't have any stake in the game because they don't underwrite any of the loans.
Yeah, that's
And we think,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, they should be underwriting some of these loans. They should be co-signing with the students.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, this fiasco that's been created, we're what at 1.8 trillion dollars now of student debt. I mean, where's Bernie Sanders with his, fair share comments? I mean, I want these colleges and universities to pay their fair share of the disaster that they've created. And right now, as far as I'm concerned, they've almost created 100% of the disaster because they've taken advantage of the entire opportunity. They've taken advantage of our students and our families. And look, it's just not right. And it is not right that the taxpayers that decided either they want a different life. They didn't want to go to college or they can afford it. Now they're actually having to pick up the tab. And frankly, some of these folks tend to go to much higher education and high paying career jobs. And it's just not right. It's not fair. It's clearly overreach. I say that Congress needs to bring these college presidents in for questioning. Frankly, I think we need to bring in the CFPB, the Consumer Finance Protection Board, and let's make sure we put the right guardrails in place so that these students and families aren't taken advantage of the way they currently are. Because right now, it's almost predatory lending. I mean, there's not much of a choice for these families to actually uh, to send their kids to college because again their tuition is so high that the only option they do have is to take out these 50 $60,000 loans. But at 18 years old, you're signing your life away basically. And I think people have to understand that. America has to understand that. And again, let's take some of those, some of that $700 billion of endowment funds that these colleges and universities are sitting on, and let make them pay for their fair share, and let's see what they can do to kind of unwrap this entire disaster that we're in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know the bill, what was it called that the Republicans passed during the debt fight, the Limit, Save, Grow Act. Part of that bill addressed the student loan. Obviously, part of it they wanted to just strike down the entire program,
Right.
which didn't make it in the final debt ceiling bill. But what did make it in was making the administration restart those payments. And I know that the administration said, well, we were already going to do that anyway. But the reality is, if the Supreme Court comes back and says, and strikes down this program, and the American people win, basically, I think it serves as an insurance policy to prevent the administration from continuing on with the payment pause. And it will force the payments to restart. So I think it was a win in that bill for the American people in that debt ceiling fight, because it serves as that insurance policy to truly force the payments to start.
Yeah, and Elaine, remember that that's worth about $5 billion per month, and they've actually have forgiven loans. I believe it's at least for the past 3 years. I think so. It's almost $200 billion in loan payment forgiveness that's already happened without without a blink of an eye, basically from the Biden administration. And so we have to just be careful that we can't keep spending this way. I mean, I know we've had a lot of conversations about inflation, but look, that kind of forgiveness is really just going to be inflationary in nature, which then again repeats itself. It's basically like a big infusion of cash to the American economy, and that's the last thing we can afford right now when the Federal Reserve is battling to try to keep inflation in check, and it's still well above twice their target rate of 2%. It's about almost 4.5%, and this week is a big economic week, by the way, because we're going to be seeing the consumer price index come out, which will be a precursor and will basically inform the Fed probably what they should be doing when their next rate hike.
And we're excited today to have Guy Berkebile with us. He's a small business owner in Somerset, Pennsylvania, and he is going to share with us some insights about his business, the success of it, the challenges that he has endured over the years, some of the fights he's joined with us. So we're excited to have him with us. Guy, thanks for joining us today.
Good morning.
We're so thrilled to have you on. As you know, we just started Main Street Matters, and we're talking to small business owners across the country about their stories and the challenges of starting a business and running a business, and how policies impact your decisions and things like that. And you've been, part of Job Creators Network and working with us on different campaigns, probably for about, was it say the last maybe 6 or 7 years? I think you joined us during the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
2015, I was on a trip to visit some of our elected state officials in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I can't remember her name, but there was a lady who spoke to us from Job Creators Network and recruited me in.
Yep, that's what we do when we meet small business owners along the way. We ask them to join us and join the fight. So, but we've kind of been in the trenches together for quite a while. But let's take a step back and talk about Guy Chemical and tell us about what Guy Chemical does and how you started the business.
So Guy Chemical, we're located in Somerset, Pennsylvania, and we are a sealant and adhesive manufacturer. Um, we do it from A to Z, is what I say. We
Mm-hmm.
formulate, develop the products, compound them, and then we mix them. We don't sell anything under our own label, but we make them for major national brands, which I can't reveal because of non-disclosure agreements. But whenever you pick up a product in the store, thinking that the brand name on the product, that's the company that made the product. It, in many cases, is a company like Guy Chemical. The company whose name's on the product oftentimes is just a marketer of the product. But we make products for the automotive market, construction, um, industrial, the industrial maintenance and repair, and the products are sold all over the world.
Interesting. And how many people do you have? How many employees do you have, and what types of backgrounds do you have working for you?
We have approximately 220 currently in a 135,000 square foot facility on a 90-acre campus here in Somerset. And the one thing I like to say whenever I talk to people about manufacturing is that when you have a manufacturing company in your community, you have a company that's capable of employing everyone. We have unskilled laborers, skilled laborers such as forklift operators, mechanics, electricians. To maintain our equipment, we're very equipment intensive, obviously, with our production. We also have accountants, engineers, both chemical engineers, mechanical engineers. We have business planners, and then we do not have any lawyers on staff, but I always say we have 2 or 3 on retainer at all times.
We all do, I think. Unfortunately, those are the unfortunate employees you have to have on staff or at least on retainer.
Correct.
They're the necessary evil.
Yeah.
I mentioned that we met during the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, or shortly. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act fight started shortly after we met. But your story was interesting, and that's why we kind of asked you to join us in the trenches of the fight. And the reason why we thought it was so interesting was some of the struggles that you had in the beginning of your business, and the level of taxes that you were paying, and how the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was really going to help your business boom. Talk a little bit about that.
I'll go in and talk to high school students, about starting a business, entrepreneurship, and also economics. And I know these shows are getting a little more, aged now, but we had the 2 shows, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and Survivor. And I always give the the contrast that a lot of people, whenever they start a business, they think, they're going to be in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and after they start their business, they quickly find out they're on the show Survivor. But I started my business in 1995 with an order from a gentleman from Egypt who wanted some auto care products. Um, and I leased space in a local manufacturer's incubator, that was being run primarily by our development council and chamber of commerce. Um, I was the only employee of the business for the first 8 months. My wife and children would come out and help with production when necessary, but I had to support my family, so I worked a day job, and then I would run product for my business in the evenings and on weekends. I'd pull all-nighters. My kids would sleep overnight, sometimes in sleeping bags while I ran product. But I did not pay myself a salary for 5 years. I lost money for approximately 3 years. I mortgaged my house 7 times over the first 14 years in order to finance the growth of the business. And these are a lot of the sacrifices that many of us have to go through, and what I had to go through um, in order to make sure that my business survived and my employees got paid. The reason that I did not take a salary from the business for 5 years is that even though we became profitable after 3 years, whenever your business is growing quickly, it's consuming all the cash and a lot of times more to finance accounts receivable, finance additional inventory, and you have to pay your employees before you pay yourself. So I always made sure that my employees were paid and that we had the money there to finance the growth of the business.
And Guy,
Alfredo, I think you can relate to that.
yeah, I was a guy. I was going to ask. I mean, I'm sure the government was there all along the way helping you, correct?
the the only help that we got from the government, I got a $70,000 small business first loan from the state of Pennsylvania.
Oh, there we go.
Which
That's good.
yeah, which was low interest.
Right.
Other than that, you know, I can't really think of any instance where we got any additional help from the government.
Yeah, of course I was being facetious there, but you said you mortgaged your house, I think 7 times.
Correct.
I mean, what made you just not just like quit? I mean, at that point, I mean, I I don't think many people would have the stomach to mortgage their house once, twice, 3 times, let alone 7 times. So what kept you going?
I had this monkey on my back of indebtedness. In order to start the business, I had about $80,000 in savings, and I got the $70,000 small business first loan from the state of Pennsylvania, and then I mortgaged my house initially, to pay for the equipment and the inventory, and the initial cash that we needed to start the business. And I continue, and I lost money for almost 3 years, but
Mhm.
I had to pay off the $70,000 loan. I had to pay off the equity line that I had on my house. Um, I really didn't know what else to do at this point, other than continue, forward and try the best that I could in order to make the business a success, and then pay my loans off. Um, it definitely does get easier as your business gets larger, because we started small. My sales my first year were about $34,000, and my loss my first year was $32,000. So I lost almost as much money as what my gross revenue was. Um, but things slowly started to turn around after about 2.5 years, and there was a silver lining, I could see on the clouds. And as I said, we started the business in 1995, and in 2001 we were awarded um, one of the Inc. 500 fastest growing privately owned
Wow.
businesses in the United States. So at that point I knew that we had something good going, and we had a good core group of employees who are helping grow the business.
Wow, that's incredible. Congratulations, by the way, on that.
Thank
Guy,
you.
I know that we've talked many times over the years about um, how your company impacts a small town like Somerset, Pennsylvania,
Yes.
and the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that not only provided the tax cut to you, but the depreciation, the immediate depreciation and expensing that allowed you to invest back in the business. Talk about the importance of how that impacts you to be able to hire and provide a career to the youth in that town, and the importance of providing that career track to the youth in a small town like that.
Sure. Yeah. Somerset County has a population of about 76,000. In Somerset itself, the town of Somerset is about 6,500, somewhere in that range. And we have a talent drain. So the young um, youth, of Somerset are going to college or going to trade school, and many of them are leaving the area, for urban areas, where they think they can get higher pay. The attraction of Somerset is that we have a very low cost, of living here. I think our median housing is, for a house is about $150,000. Um, but the impact that Guy Chemical has on a community of this size, I want to give you, an idea of what the size of our community is. We are pumping millions of dollars in payroll, into Somerset. We're one of the largest employers in our county, and we are now not only hiring, local engineers who graduate, who grew up here and went to school, and now have a company that they can come back to locally. A good example is a chemical engineer, young one, named Philip Walters, who joined us from a small town of Fairhope, Pennsylvania. So he was able to stay here and work, and not only are we helping to keep some of these professionals here and providing jobs for a wide variety of the population in Somerset, but we're also attracting professionals from outside the area to move into Somerset. You know, in Beyond this, we also contribute to little league teams, soccer teams, um, the Walk for Life, with the Cancer Society. There's many events in our area that the Guy Chemical contributes to and enhances the life here in Somerset County.
And that's so important. Alfredo, you always talk about how small business owners are the kind of the backbone of these communities, and you always use that example of sponsoring the little
Yeah.
league teams and things like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly. When you look at that and you look at those scoreboards, Guy, I'm sure you don't see, Coca-Cola, Delta, Citibank, none of these big employers. I mean, it's all the local communities and all the local small businesses.
Correct.
I'm sure yours is the primary, but just I'm sure there's the local car guy and the local pizza, the hamburgers guys. I mean, these local communities. I mean, we saw this happen during COVID when all of our main streets just shut down because they were told that they have to, and our communities came to a grinding halt. I think people got a little bit of a preview what this world would be like without our small businesses. And look, you're a larger small business, but you're contributing to that community in a great way. That if your business was gone, I'm not sure that county would really be in the shape that it's in today.
Correct. Yeah. And you know, Somerset County is a great place to live. Um, we do not have any local customers in Somerset County or even in any of the surrounding counties of Somerset, and we have no potential customers here. We are contributing, to our, to our county and to these organizations simply because we want this to be a great place to live, and we want to contribute to making this a great place to live.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It sounds like you're definitely doing that, and I think all the folks of Somerset County, I'm sure, are very grateful for that.
Yeah. And the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that was passed if I'm correct, in December of 2017, um, has been, has helped Guy Chemical greatly. Whenever we take on a new project, typically a customer will come to us and, with an opportunity, and then we'll evaluate that opportunity. Usually the opportunity involves an investment in equipment. What we always use as a gauge of whether it's worthwhile to invest in this new opportunity is our return on investment, our ROI. How long will it take us to pay off our initial investment? And the reduction in taxes obviously help, but to me, the biggest part the biggest benefit to a company like Guy Chemical that's very heavy in production equipment was the immediate expensing of capital assets. So whenever we would buy a new piece of equipment, instead of having to depreciate it or amortize it over 7 years or 10 years, we could completely expense that new piece of equipment in the first year, that we buy it. And that makes the equipment less expensive to us, lowers the amount of time that it takes for us to realize a payback on our investment, and increases the number of new projects that we're able to take on.
Yeah, we've heard that from so many folks across the country, how imperative and really how important it was to be able to grow their business. Now, Guy, as you very well know, that's starting to phase out. They're starting to sunset a lot of the benefits of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. I mean, we work with the House Ways and Means Committee closely. What would you tell the committee? What would you tell the Chairman Smith, about that? About the fact that these, primary benefits to small businesses within the Tax and Jobs Act are expiring.
Since the jobs cuts, or the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act took effect, in 2018. It was passed in 2017. I believe it became effective in 2018. We saw our gross revenue go on a trajectory that just continued to go up at a faster rate, than what we were accustomed to in the past, which is a good thing. It creates employment, and it creates the need for new equipment. This need for new equipment creates a broader a broader stimulus across our economy, where we're ordering equipment from Missouri. That company in Missouri has to then hire more people and hire raw materials. And the train has been going at a good rate, at a fast pace. And we need to make these, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and this immediate expensing of depreciation permanent, because we do not want to derail the train. Let's keep a good thing going.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you purchase, one piece of equipment and it creates 4 or 5 new jobs, then it creates that much more tax revenue, and that much more, people spending money within the community. And it just seems like sometimes the people in Washington just aren't listening to those kinds of stories, and that's why it's so important for you to talk about, sort of the consequence of you as a business owner keeping more of your own money and being able to invest back in your employees, invest back in your community, and invest back in your business. And that is so important for people to understand. And you said something at the beginning of this interview. You said, I talk to high schoolers all the time, and I try to explain to them that when you start a business, you're not a millionaire right away. And all of those sacrifices, I mean, my family had a tire store, a Goodyear tire store, and we were an independent dealership, but they didn't franchise back then. We had about 10 employees, and we didn't take paychecks out of the business for a long time. We made sure our employees got paid. There were sleepless nights. Thursday night was sometimes scary because there wasn't enough money in the bank account sometimes. And it was scary, and we wanted to make sure they had insurance and just all the stresses that go with that. I can relate. I know Alfredo can relate.
Yeah.
He had a business, his own business as well. And it's kind of where our hearts are. And of course, why we're doing what we're doing. But it's just, I think people don't understand the sacrifices that small business owners make. And that's why it's so important for you to tell these stories.
Yes. Back whenever, was it 2018, whenever the Republicans lost control of the House. At that point, Hillary Clinton and the Democrats started a narrative that business owners like myself were taking the savings from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and were putting it in our pocket.
Right.
And we were not investing in our business. And I can honestly tell you that, um, what I did with the savings from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I invested in a new lab. I invested in additional mixing equipment. I invested in new packaging equipment, and beyond that, we've been fortunate enough that we have a profit sharing slash bonus program that we pay out to our employees twice a year. We increased those bonuses as a result of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. The money that I realized as savings from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was completely spent, on reinvesting in our plant, investing in our employees, and beyond that, I spent more money than what I realized as savings from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act to pay for this expansion of my business. I
And
remember I'm sorry. I remember the first year after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed, Guy Chemical had a sales growth around 35%,
hmm,
which was unheard of for us.
yeah.
Yeah.
Guy, I was gonna say, and if you had taken some of that money and put it in your pocket, uh, that's not all that bad either. That's not a bad thing because you think about it, all the risks that you taken, you put your house on you mortgage your house 6 7 times. I mean, that's the one thing that I always tell small business owners and entrepreneurs. It's not that you're in a not-for-profit business, right? I mean, you actually got into business to make a profit, to have a return on your investment. You had an idea, you had a vision, and you decided to go for it. I mean, that's the beauty of this country, right? Is that you can do that. I think what aches me is that you hear Bernie Sanders talking about greedy millionaires and billionaires and that they don't pay their fair share. This is where they overlook the fact that these some millionaires were our country's biggest entrepreneurs and and investors in small businesses, and they put everything that they own in many cases, just like you did, on the line. And if you take a little bit of profit for yourself, for your family, right? To maybe take a vacation, which is really rare because I have to tell you, even when I was on vacation, my job, my work followed me, my company followed me wherever I was. And so I just want to say is it's okay, I think, if you decided to take a little bit. In this case, you didn't. You invested it back in your business, but I think we should stop feeling that it's a bad thing to actually maybe take a little bit of a reward for all of that risk that you've taken.
Yes, I think, small business owners, whenever I was growing up and as a young adult, were always revered, looked up to.
Yeah.
There's been, I think, a little bit of a change in sentiment by some people, primarily by the left, that, um, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I did not draw a salary for my business for 5 years.
Right.
So is it wrong for me to to expect a return on my investment. Of course not. Is it wrong for me to pay myself, a decent salary, for my business, and of course not. That's why I started the business, was because I wanted to become better off financially. And
I mean, Guy, not to interrupt, but I don't see Bernie
yeah,
Sanders refusing his salary that he gets as a senator every year.
correct.
He seems to be okay taking a salary, even though he's a quote unquote public servant. So you who have put everything on the line for years, in year 5 you decide to take a salary. I mean, I don't think that's exactly a stretch, and should be considered being greedy. And by the way, you'll be happy to know, Guy, that in a recent poll that we did with Scott Rasmussen and John McLaughlin, our small business owners in this country are still revered. In fact, they're just a notch below the military. They're about 88% on the military, 87% with our small business owners.
Yes.
Politicians and media and all that drop down to the 20s and 30s. So you'll be happy to know that our small business owners are still appreciated and revered in this country.
And I appreciate that. It, the older employees that I have, who are around, who were with me, in the earlier days of starting Guy Chemical, they knew what we went through. We used to take turns bringing a hand towel in from work because we couldn't afford paper towels to clean or to dry our hands off after
Hmm.
we washed them. We would take turns bringing soap in, like lava soap,
Wow.
to wash our hands. Now, God forbid, if we ran out of towels or hand soap at work, I'd
Right.
probably have 2 or 3 employees upset, and they'd be walking off and going home.
Right.
Um, but
Do you ever share those stories with your employees, sort
I
of the early days and the some of the stories that so that some of the current employees who kind of see the new facility and the state of the art equipment and the
yes,
fancy lunchroom and all of that. I mean, so that they understand sort of it wasn't always like this.
correct. Yeah, I do. One of the best things of owning your own business, from my perspective, is walking the plan and interacting with the employees, and getting to know,
Yeah.
what their problems are and how we can help, solve those problems. And they also enter, or tell me what they see as far as what we can do within the business, to improve, because I'm not on the plant floor, on a daily basis like I used to be. So it's very good to get the broad perspective and to give them a an idea of what it was like in the early years before we could afford everything that we have now.
But it's family, right, Guy? I mean, that's the way I used to view my employees. I mean, it really was almost an extension of my family. I think you would agree.
I agree. Yes, and we can't do this on the plant floor, but in the office, you talk about family. If one of our professional staff has, a childcare issue, where somebody has to, somebody's sick or somebody has to go to an appointment, we allow them to bring their kids in,
Hmm.
and they come in and we interact with the kids, and it's, to be honest with you, a lot of fun, to
Hmm.
interact with these
That's
employees and
great.
their children, and have the children see what we do.
You're right. Yeah, that's great.
To the high school classes that I talk to, and the number one um, trait I would say is a steadfast determination that you're going to succeed. I lost money for 2.5 years. It was over 2.5 years, before I, started turning a profit. And you have to figure it out. How am I going to support my family while I'm going to start this business? You got to figure that out. How am I going to, um, you know, make the cash flow work until cash flow improves? Um, and you just need to keep working at it. And the longer that I stay in business, my banker told me this. My banker came to me after we grew significantly, and he goes, you're not going to experience the same growth going forward as you have in the past, because you're bigger now. 10% growth of $1 million, um, is is not as big as 10% of $10 million. Never knew you're that size. And I looked at my banker and I said, that's kind of funny because the bigger we get, the more opportunities I see.
Hmm.
And we just continued, um, to grow and to take advantage of opportunities. And as you grow, you kind of get enlightened and you see a broader picture of, where can your company go in the future?
Guy, I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking to you about your outside interests outside of Guy Chemical. And you are an Ironman. How did
Correct.
you get involved in races and triathlons? And I mean, I run a little bit. I've done some half marathons. I've run one marathon. I've done one. They call it a mini triathlon. So you would
Right.
probably laugh. It's like a third of a mile swim, 15-mile bike ride, and a 5K at the end. But what is an Ironman? How long is that in comparison to my mini triathlon?
About how do I deal with the stress, from owning a business?
Hmm.
And I use exercise, to a large degree, where I get up early in the morning and um, I do my workouts before work, and it enables me to think through some of the problems, but also to burn off some of that stress. But an Ironman is a long distance triathlon that involves a 2.4 mile open water swim,
Wow.
112-mile bike, and followed by a full 26.2 mile marathon, all nonstop in the same day. Because when people say, "How many days do you have to complete that?" And I go, "No, it's all in one day."
Wow.
And most people know the Ironman from the coverage of the Ironman World Championships they'll see on TV out of Hawaii.
Oh yeah, I cannot imagine doing a race like that. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it is amazing that you do that on more you've done it more than once too. So that is amazing. But Guy, I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank you for being part of Job Creators Network and taking time to share your story, not just today, but over the last 5-6 years, both in your community and nationally, because we think Americans really need to understand how hard, how much small business owners really are the backbone of this economy. And so, thank you for joining Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone, of course. And we'll look forward to talking to you again. Definitely want to have you on again.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I appreciate Job Creators Network standing up for small business and providing a platform for us to speak about the issues that affect us.
Happy to do it. Thank you, Guy.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. And everyone, please subscribe to Main Street Matters at salempodcast.com or anywhere you get your podcasts.